Well, hello and welcome to Concentric Circles, the show about being a 21st century creative. My name is Jim Tramontana, and I am joined today by the illustrious Vinnie Fiorello, Obi Fernandez, and Jono Diener. How are you, fellas?
Chillin'.
We are good. I said we are good. I'm answering on everyone's behalf.
Thank you, Jono. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You know how I feel.
I think we're all doing good. Obi, you have to say you were about to say something, and Jono cut you off so rudely. I don't know.
No. I think I was just taking a deep breath. But what I will say is that I'm very distracted. I have tacos on my brain.
Oh,
I texted Vinnie earlier about tacos, and I
was going to get tacos.
Oh.
Did you do it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, man. So I'm super distracted, super distracted. It all started this morning because my wife was like, "Oh, it'd be so great if we could go get like good breakfast burritos." And then I didn't want to go to like any spot to get. I wanted to like go to like a real spot and get a breakfast burrito, but
yeah.
It wasn't happening for me today. So it's been on the brain.
Mexican food on the brain is a good thing, my friend.
Love it so much. It's the best.
Vinny, you've had tacos and you've had New York style bagels. What else has been in the repertoire?
I went to a museum today. They had Alice Through the Looking Glass exhibit.
Cool.
So me and my wife and daughter, it's our first outing during COVID, full masks and amongst the COVID crisis people that are out there, and it was weird. Yeah, I'll be the first to say that it was weird, but not being out was weird, but being out of my bubble was weird. I spent the last 3 weeks pretty much at home, except for going to get a bagel or some bagels, and I'd come home or go out and take the dog out, but that's still in my bubble. It's in my neighborhood and whatever it is, right? So it was my first time out, and when you're working as much as I have been lately, it feels weird not to work. So that's where I'm sort of at with it. But let me go into why I've been working so much. We collectively are launching a Kickstarter for The Inevitable. So it's been down to the wire, and a lot of 11th hour things that are happening, a lot of content that needs to be created, and a lot of decisions to be made. Then have that on top of paper and plastic and a dad stuff and a husband stuff and just general. I want to do art and I want to do other things. So it's been stressful, good stress and bad stress. And I needed to step out of my bubble today. It felt weird not to work, but it was good not to work.
Harkening back to last week's episode about balance, you took a little time for yourself to kind of just decompress.
Sometimes you have to do that, man. And I especially now, I was looking at, my schedule, which is some records that I'm releasing for Lost Music, which is a pop punk label that I do, and Paper and Plastic, and The Inevitables that's coming down the pipe. There's a lot of stuff going on, man. So I felt like there was a 1,000-pound weight on me. Now I have to kind of chill for a moment and know the weight's going to go back on, but I needed a moment of calm before the storm, so to speak, metaphorically. Yeah.
It's also nice when that's like a nice little recharge, like in the last 2 weeks specifically too. So in addition to Inevitable stuff, I've been demoing for a new record for one of the bands I'm in. And the day the Kickstarter launches is also the day we start recording for 2 weeks. But we've also been preparing because of the COVID stuff. So there's people from out of state, and I'm not going to say who it is yet because it's not announced, but we're recording at my brother's place. But my brother has a child and a wife, and it's not just like, hey, let's all run around and cough on each other. Like, there's precautions we all took. We all got COVID tests, so I had to put the swab up my nose and do the whole thing. And keep in mind, like, I've been so oh no, not that one.
I know. I'm just trying to start controversy.
Oh boy. I'm blushing. I have some pigment now. What? I also have, so I haven't been like outside at all. Like, I'll go to the grocery store or whatever, and I walked outside and my thigh blinded me because like the sun hit it just enough. And I was like, I'm not just translucent anymore. I'm reflective. That's how pale I am. So I'm trying to slowly like learn I was gonna get a bike. I just never got a bike. I don't go for walks. I just live in my my basement dungeon where I do music stuff, or my office where I'm writing all day now. It's bonkers.
Yeah, as a brown man, I don't think I ever have to worry about that. I think I'm good. Jono, I don't know how you get stuff done, man. Being that we're on the phone all day long together. I mean, come on.
It's also, I mean, that's like deep breathing into the phone. That's not actual work. That's how we fall asleep. I'll be like, Ashley, be quiet for a second. Obi. Obi.
I know, my wife's like, who are you talking to?
Shh. It's Jake from State Farm.
Exactly.
What are you wearing, Jake from State?
Not a black shirt.
There has been so much going on, and it's true. We do have to kind of find that those happy places. For me lately, the happy places have been my grill and the beach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Summer, man. Of course, that's what it should be, right?
I know. It's just your brain has to shut off. You need that. You need that recharge.
How far are you from the beach? How long does it take you to get to the water?
Oh man, so we used to live 8 minutes from the beach, which was super awesome. But now we live 20 minutes from the beach, which in New Jersey time is nothing. So I'm quintessential Central Jersey town,
So you're next to Snooki. That's cool, man.
Definitely next to Snooki. Yep. Actually had coffee with JWoww the other day. It was awesome.
There's a certain amount of people that are I have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, it's I feel, as it's coming out of my mouth, I feel terrible that I know the names. I'm ooh, I feel a little dirty.
JWoww is my nickname, so that's where it all comes from.
That's great.
So this is a nice little transition, and I'll kick it to Jim in a second. But one thing that I've been doing that's been kind of keeping my sanity through all this, we have a comics Twitter group with a bunch of people that I literally haven't known in my whole life, and then I knew my friend Liana and my friend Matt, who I did a comic with, and then from that we made a bunch of awesome friends. So with that said, Liana is here today, and Jim, I'll throw it at you.
Tell you all about it. Please welcome to the show Liana Kangas. She is a freelance comic artist and a self-proclaimed edgelord dog mom. In both digital and traditional formats. She is both best known for her work on She Said Destroy from Vault Comics, and has worked with publishers such as TKO, Image, and Black Mask. Now we are excited to announce she is the artist of The Inevitables. So please welcome Liana to the Inner Circle, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
Yeah. Hey, I don't know. Can you give us that dab one more time? I'm not sure everybody got. Yeah. It's so cool. It's so great to have you on here. It's been really funny. We've been just talking about it, and as we've been preparing for multiple guests and who's going to be coming on, and obviously we've been living in the secret world of the Inevitables that now doesn't have to be such a secret. So it's really cool that we actually get to talk about this project openly, and that you're bringing your vibe and you're here with us. And so, Vinnie, what are we talking about today with our new bud here?
We're talking about finding your voice, right? So as creatives, you're taking in, and not even just creatives, everybody in this day and age, you're taking in all this information, and you're throwing away and kind of putting aside the things that don't really pertain to you or you don't feel for, and you're boiling down all the stuff that you like into this concentrate, and then you put it through your filter and it comes out. And for some people that's news, and for some people that's art and drawings, for some people that's music, and I'm not talking about the sum of its parts, right? I'm talking about taking in an influence and putting it through your own filter and having something come out on the other side that's all your own, right? Mm-hmm. And mind you, it could be art, but also it could be that headspace of the message. You're taking in what your parents when you were growing up said, and your favorite grandma sat you down and said these really cool things, and the books that you read and the poetry that you wrote, everything under the sun, and you come out and you find your voice and you have your own message, you have your own style. And tonight, man, I think it's perfect. The guest is awesome, and it's about finding your voice, man, and it's important more now than it's ever been. It's the moment is now for you to locate that voice and amplify the message that you feel passionate about. So, everybody, We're going to talk about Find Your Voice, man.
So, yeah, man. So I this is a very near and dear topic for me. And so before I talk about it, though, I think that there's a lot of like philosophy that comes with like kind of finding your own voice. I think there's a lot of like time that gets put into it. And I think that like for every artist, like for me, for example, if I go back and I played you like Westbound Train's first record, I hate everything about that record, right? The only good thing about that record is the fact that I learned how to make a record. That's the best part about it. And I got to make it with cool people, but whatever. I personally, as an artist, hate that record. Hate the songs, hate the way I sound. But that was the beginning of a journey. And I accidentally, I think, stumbled into finding like my own literal voice as like the singer of a band, right? Mm-hmm. Like when you're like a kid and like you're like jamming in the garage, you're jamming in the basement, like everybody tries to like sing like Kurt Cobain for a second or whatever, and then like you're like, this hurts, I can't do this, my voice is not made for this. But then I think like as you kind of start like trying new things, and to me it was always about like listening to a lot of records and taking in the nuances, I accidentally kind of started paying attention to like all these people that I loved, like their little nuances, like, you know, Curtis Mayfield's falsetto, you know, Bob Marley's vibrato, you know, Sam Cooke's runs. Why were Sam Cooke's runs different than when I listened to an Otis Redding record? You know what I mean? Anyway, so my point is that I think we stumble into these things by accident. Liana, as an artist, as someone who's like drawing things all the time, doing comics, how does that journey actually start for you? Because your style really is distinguished, hence why you're on Team Inevitables. How did that journey actually start for you? Because your work now is so recognizable.
Thank you, and thanks for having me on. This is really exciting, and you all are obviously great, and we've talked before, but it's really cool to be on the podcast. I have gone through a weird transition of what my art was originally to what it is now, in that I was not in comics at all. And eventually, at some point, I completely diverted my view of, I have a dog by my feet. I'm really sorry. He was like, I'm here for this conversation. I have arrived. So I originally wanted to be in fine art, and sort of like the lowbrow fine art that's found in Florida and things like that. And at one point I even wanted to do like fine portraiture, which is totally different than all of that. So I had found that most of the media that I was ingesting was comics in my early teens, and then continued into my late 20s. And I think because that was the media that I was consuming, it just eventually made me completely, I guess, maybe fall in and eventually give up and try it. And so I think it's shaped by the people whose stories I really enjoy reading as well. So I would be sort of like you were saying, I would try different things from different artists that I enjoyed, weird things that they did in their work, or maybe a certain technique that I would try to emulate, or things like that. And eventually, I suppose it just made it to here, which now that you say that to me is kind of surprising, because I'm still wondering if I have a look yet, right? Mm. And I think that's normal for every creative, to constantly be reconsidering their creativity, or like what they're inputting into it and how it defines them as a person and their actual work.
I think an interesting thing, and you know, it goes with being a fan of art or, you know, entertainment or whatever, by just simply ingesting so many different things, it starts just going through the filter of your brain. And if you're able to harness that and shoot it out, then, you know, that is potentially your thing. But then there's a difference where, like Liana, for example, your art, you know, I know a lot of artists, you're a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? You're doing things on purpose. Like sometimes you could be like, I'll just like, whatever happens, happens. Like if I'm writing a song, I'll naturally like sing something and those lyrics will just kind of blurt out and then it becomes a thing. But there are people that go to school for art. There are people that are refining this thing. And that's how, you know, with guidance from someone else is how they end up getting on the right track. Whereas someone like me is kind of like, I feel like I just fell down a staircase for the last 20 years. And then I was like, I think I got a thing, whatever. So it kind of gets to the point where, like all of us, whether we've been in bands, whether we're doing art, whatever, I imagine there's a bit of imposter syndrome for all of us. But then the other part of it is bypassing that and being confident in your work. So maybe that's another thing. Like, Liana, is there a time you've, like, I imagine, have felt imposter syndrome, but more so like, do I fit this thing that I signed up for? Do I have my own style? And why did they pick me for this kind of thing?
Yeah. Including this project. I'm just kidding. I actually felt that this project was like perfectly fit for me, which usually I'm not as aggressively confident in things like that. But there's things that align, I suppose, depending on what projects work, where things are maybe a challenge or things feel like, the collaborators are wonderful and they're people that you enjoy as humans that seem to all line up for me. And usually one of those aspects is why I will feel that part of imposter syndrome, or if is my work good enough, or is it on the par with what I think that they're expecting, or things like that. And of course, as an artist, and maybe just myself in general, imposter syndrome is huge, especially starting out. And since I'm still so new to comics, I think only in the last couple of years I really pursued it, is that you're trying to juggle while trying to sell your art that you would do as a passion as a monetized thing. And so you have to represent yourself like almost sort of like a retailer, like you're not selling your own work, you're selling this thing because it's your job and you're good and you have the skills to do it and you put the work in and you put the work in. And I think that's why I feel so confident, because I had somebody earlier on in my career, which made me feel a lot better going into comics, say, you have to have one of three things. You have to be really, 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 really good, like on a level that is unreal, like Kim Jong-il, I think his name is, where he just like draws from memory, doesn't need reference, has these incredible drawings. Or you have to be really incredibly likable. And the third one was you have to deliver things on time. And so I would like to think that I at least have two of them, and I'm striving for the third one. And I always want to make sure that I am developing my skills. And I think that's why the imposter syndrome sort of fades away as the more you work towards your skill and your craft, even though you're putting out work that represents you, which is scary, but that will all fade away when you have the support from friends and the uplifting from other people and the drive to want to be better.
I have a few things actually, because I've been like kind of sitting on like some like questions and like headspace, right? And first, when I was reading, bio and some info, and you're an ex-Floridian. You grew up in Florida, right? And I always you know what? I always think that when you're creative, Florida breeds like this almost like indestructible creative, because you have to. The resources aren't there, and you have to like really want it, and you really have to, and I hate the word, but I will use it anyway. You have to grind for it, and you have to like put in the time and put in the energy, band wise. I know from experience, there weren't bands coming down to Florida to tour. So you had to create a scene and create a vibe that was all Florida, right? And art is very similar in that. And as I've gotten older and got more interested in art and design, right? There's a specific Florida thing, and you mentioned it kind of earlier, where that sort of low art, but there's a little bit of a different twist to it than, let's say, in Los Angeles or Chicago or New York or even Nashville. There's like a certain thing that they have there. So I find it interesting, and I go, yeah, she had to fight for her voice, man. She's from Florida. It's tough. It's tough to be a creative, right? So that's number one, and right on, right? But as I was looking at references and kind of get my head around it, there was you had an interview with Comics Bookcase, and we did say it was Jared, right? That did the interview, and his question, one aspect of your art that I really like is how distinguishable it is. You can tell it's your page at a glance because it's so different. And then he goes on to ask about references and the people that you like. But that first part to me speaks volumes about anyone. When someone goes, yeah, it's, when I look at it, I go, this is who it is. It's right away. It's the same that Sam Cooke of what Obi was talking about, where you go, oh, or Bob Marley's sort of vibe that he does with his voice. As soon as you hear it, you go, that's the person, or that's the influence of the person, right? And I find that when someone says that to you, and knowing your background, knowing from Florida, and you were grinding on it, like, how does that make you feel? Like, does that make you feel like I'm getting to the point where it's recognizable, my style, and and to be honest with you, it's that just by even doing the art, there's a certain thing that you're trying to convey that when people pick up that it's you, then they conjure something in their mind already, knowing your background, knowing previous projects, right? So when you have that happen and someone says that to you, like, do you feel that you're getting to that point of finding your voice and really have your own style and have that thing, or do you think that there's time to go more and to refine it and to go into another phase of what your style is and that vibe? So that's where I'm sort of at with it, right? Like, do you think that you're at that point, or do you think that there's still a lot more work or a little bit more work to get there?
Well, coming from you, that definitely means that I'm retiring right now and my career is done and I've done what I need to do. I think that's great. And if anything, that inspires me to like work harder, especially hearing that from you guys in terms of, oh, I didn't realize my style was recognizable. That's great. Or like what Jared had said, you don't really, maybe it's the imposter syndrome talking, or maybe it's the grind where I'm like, okay, on to the next thing. I don't take any time to, like, it's a bad quality, but I don't take time to celebrate small victories. It's things like that I am learning that I need to resonate with, that somebody says, oh yeah, I totally recognize her style. I could recognize, a picture that she's drawn. That's great for me because one person means there could be other people. So I'm, something like that, not even really honing into the current style I have now, but just like working harder at just doing the work and being consistent with that being my goal of, getting to where I want to be skill-wise, or like learning that next new thing that I'm like, oh, I really love that, so I want to learn how to do that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, want to learn how to do like Sid Mead level background sci-fi to be able to create like, a Blade Runner in my head or something like that. Just like small steps that obviously on a larger scale while you're working and doing things for, to put food on the table or whatever, doing that for yourself too. Cause like, why did you originally get to this anyway? And why did I go through all of that, back then to get to here? So if almost like being kind to myself and my future self to just continue working harder on it.
Yeah. I think there's a few things like that, as you guys are talking, that I got really stoked on. So the small victories thing, right? Not taking the time to celebrate the small victories. I'm so with you on that. I feel like if I stop to celebrate the littlest thing, like I've lost time, I've lost an opportunity, I've lost a moment. Or on the flip side of that, I think, oh man, you're being too cocky, just keep going, right? You're not there yet. There's always that fight. But I think what we're touching on is the idea of like philosophy. And I think for a lot of creative people, it takes a while for your philosophy to catch up to like what you're actually doing, right? So you're on the go, you're producing, drawing, writing, singing, whatever it might be. And then you start to figure out how to do it a little bit, right? And then you're like, you almost don't like give yourself the time to like figure out that you've stumbled onto a couple things, And then before you know it, you're like, oh, I'm actually getting better at this, but you're still not recognizing that. But all the while, like you've mentioned like 5 different things. You've mentioned like the idea of like, well, I'm actually like a retailer. I'm actually pushing this whole other thing, Vinnie touched on it, like your surroundings, like where you're coming from, like it becomes your identity. It becomes this thing that like we never ever like feel confident enough to tell people, you know? And I remember even for me, like as a singer, even now, like I feel confident, and this is going to sound hella cocky, but people who know me know where I'm coming from. I'm super confident in the fact that like you can put me up against anybody. I'm not saying that I'm better than that person, but you can put me up against any human being and I will sound like me and I will be distinguishable. And that person probably sounds like 50 other people, but you're not going to find another dude that sounds like me. Right. So I've got to figure out how to use that to like my advantage. But it took me a long time to be confident enough to actually like say that, right? That actually pushes me to move to other projects, into a project like this where like, why is a dude like me working on a comic? You know what I mean? Like, why is a dude like me writing ska punk songs or whatever the case is, you know? But I love everything that you're saying, because what you've done is you've actually put in so much work, you've developed a philosophy, and now you're actually like building this path, this other like, you know, this lane that other creatives can look at and go, wait, maybe I can do that too. Oh, like, oh, these guys struggle with admitting those things. Like I struggle with admitting that. Like, is that the hump that I need to kind of get over? So I'm just stoked. I'm more of like giving a praise than like asking a question in terms of like this roundtable thing that like we can talk about those things, because I think those are the things that keep artists and other creative people down. They don't let them take steps forward. They're like, well, I have to sound like that guy, or I have to do this like that person. Like, no, dude, like you have to move. Like your philosophy will catch up to you if you're paying attention to it. But the things that we have to be like really honest about is that philosophy is being built. It's not just happenstance. You know what I mean?
And I feel like it's more important to be you than it is to be the best. And
yeah.
Because, so I use this example all the time. So in the Flint music scene, there are like the punk rock musicians, and then there are like some of the best like church gospel drummers and other musicians I've ever met in my life. But in my personal opinion, there is a level of being too good at something to where it's not even enjoyable. Like, so I always make the joke of like, if you're way too good at like guitar, you just play Weather Channel music, like doo, 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 doo. And it's always like this goofy thing, you know. But you know, that comes back to art or singing. I'm not a great singer, but I sound like me when I sing. You know what I mean?
I think authenticity is the largest part of being a creator that is often passed by, because most people go into it being like, oh, I have to be this, I have to be this, I have to like be this house level for like in comics specifically, like, oh, I have to draw like Marvel House style 1990 whatever, or like you know, for musicians I have to sound like this whatever is on American Idol blah blah blah, or like to get into, you know, to get a signed label or, you know, a signed record or anything. And what's interesting and what I have seen personally, and obviously being a huge music lover, collecting records and, you know, having music be a big part of comics for me, and seeing and meeting Jono, was that there's this level of authenticity that is like you being yourself, you know, unabashed, no sorries given about how ridiculous you're going to put out whatever you're going to put out, right? And I think that applies to what you're working on as well. It being, yeah, you've never done a comic before, but that shows that you have this storytelling aspect that you have creatively already, and it needs to get out, and it accompanies the other creative things that you do. And so that's what's great about creating in general, is that it doesn't matter what it is. If you're being you, it turns out great. And I don't think a lot of, you know, creators starting off in, you know, music industry or comics industry really ever talk about that, because that's how you're successful. That's how you're known as.
Yeah, and you've got to be brave enough to do it, right? You've got to be brave enough to actually take that step, for sure. What do you got, Vinnie?
You know what? As I was sitting there and kind of listening to it, and I think that, you know, style sometimes, no matter what it is, music and art, you know, it is a filter, right? You know, a brain to hand, whatever that is, right? But inside that brain, there's a whole nother set of, you know, what you think about a subject, you know, political view, whatever it is, right? That's making you, right? And I vibe on that, right? And I know what you're saying, but, you know, when I was sitting here and listening to it, I thought to myself, okay, does anyone ever know, like, where it's a specific thing, like, here's ska punk, and it's that genre is so specifically like related to Real Big Fish or whoever, right? Boss Tones. But I was sitting here and I was kind of like thinking to myself, and in the 90s there was a comic called Milk and Cheese, and it was Evan Dorkin was the illustrator, and his style was so specific that if I saw something across the record store, just tiny, on a CD cover or in a magazine or a poster, I could call it and go, there's Evan Dorkin. And it was so closely related to ska and ska punk that, like, he was the ska punk guy that did, comics as well. And he did Milk and Cheese, and was so closely related to this other genre that was outside of his thing that I went, yeah, that's cool. But I'm thinking to myself right now, like, can you align yourself with other things and it still be finding your voice? And you could still ride in the car, right? And go, dude, we're riding the car together, but it's still me. But dude, we're riding the car. Can that happen? Are you still you? If you're riding the car with like this other bigger idea or bigger thing or genre or whatever. So, Liana.
The reason why I was like immediately like, oh my gosh, yes, Evan Dorkin. I mean, one of the biggest, huge vinyl toy collection things is Milk and Cheese from, back then. And he was just creating this comic that he was like, this is hilarious. Great. It's amazing. You know exactly what it is. It's resonated all the way up into the 2020, right? Like, it's crazy. And his vinyl toys based off of, these characters in this comic, I would assume they were huge collector items for the original ones, but, just shows that, there is a market for other things from these creators. Like, I can't get enough of these songs and I need something to accompany these songs, so I need something else, right? Or I love this comic book so much. That's why I always create playlists for all of my work, because that's what I'm doing. Like, I am so hyper focusing on what I need it to look like when you're reading it, but you can't just read something, or in my mind, you can't just read something without something to listen to, right? There's a movie soundtrack or whatever. So, sorry, I got really excited about that because, the car analogy is amazing.
That's how I feel, though, like, even on this project, you know what I mean? And, like, when I think about, and it's one of my favorite things about getting to do so much with Vinnie, because it's like, whenever we start talking about X, I know that it's not just X, right? I know that, like, somewhere along the line, it's going to turn into, like, it's going to spawn off into, like, 5 other things. And then we're going to start, like, retrofitting things together. And just like the Inevitables, it was like, hey, here's this idea for this story. And it's like, well, what if this happened in the story? And then it was like, dude, I've got these lyrics that would be great. Let's make a soundtrack. And then, it's like, okay, now I'm getting Vinnie's lyrics, right? I have a certain way that I write, and I'm just like, oh man, like, he's been writing music a certain way for the past, like, 27 years now, you know what I mean? But, like, I'm in the car going, hey, there's things that all these new experiences, but I feel like I still have my voice. I feel like it's still me. I don't feel like I've, like, compromised something artistically or like authenticity wise. So it's very possible, Vinnie, what you're saying.
I think so too. I mean, that's how I feel anyway, right? Because I've aligned myself with certain artists and certain ideas, certain toy collectors and other things. I mean, Funko, just for instance, right? It's like, to some toy collectors, Funko's a dirty word, right? Like, this is mass manufactured, blah, blah, blahs. But for me, Mike Becker, who started the company and was the founder, he took me in and mentored me about manufacturing toys. And he did stuff for Less Than Jake. He did my first Monkey versus Robot and later Wonderland toy stuff, right? And I aligned myself so hard with him as a person, and I rode in his car, right? But I still think that I found my voice as a creator of those lines, right? And side note, though, I want to go back to Evan Dorkin real quick. Evan Dorkin, two things that will always stay with me. He had this comic strip, just was in the back of one of the like a sidebar to the comic in Milk and Cheese, and it was, hey, these are the things, my favorite things I love, right? and one was Pez, and then the other one was capsule toys, like the 25-cent capsule toy machine. And because of that, I started to collect Pez, and I started to go, every time I see a capsule toy machine now, I'm like, 25 cents. And it's way back when, decades ago. And it's because of Evan Dorkin. It's so, burned in my brain, that strip that he did of the 9 things or whatever it was that he loved. And 2, I wound up doing, and Pez collecting and the weird obsession about the machine, the 25-cent machine. So,
dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird. But the Inevitables thing, though, just real quick, it really taught me to share space, right? But also have the ability to think, I still have my voice, right? Doesn't matter that I'm not doing the art or I'm not like hands-on in a conversation about, hey, Obi and Alex, I know you guys are talking about like parts and music. Let me in. I want to be in. Like, it's cool, right? Let them drive, because I feel that no matter what, I have my voice, right? And I think I trained myself to do that. And through the years, I've given myself praise enough. Yes, like you've done some things successful, and I felt good. So I don't have to touch everything. I don't have to like try to jam everything through my filter to feel that my voice is being heard. So
one thing I really liked too was that so Vinnie initially hit me up, and then it was me talking to Vinnie and Obi, and then it was, here's a concept, here is what we want you to do with it. And it was like a loose enough concept where, going to an early episode when we were talking about trust, they trusted me to write something. So then I would be like, here's what I have. And they would come back with, well, here's some edits, whatever. And then it got to the point where we started building this collaborative world. And it was a lot more than just the Jono show or the Vinnie show or the Obi show. And then when we started getting to bring other people in, so Liana, when I was pitching you and everything, I remember being like, this is almost exactly the vibe that you were talking about in every aspect, but it's also one of my friends who I had that was number 1 in my Rolodex. So it wasn't by any means like let me do some research to find someone that's kind of like it. It was just like, no, it's there. That's it. And it was this hilarious, everyone unanimously agreed. But the cool thing is getting to see what you do with everything, because along the way, it's the same as I have Vinnie having ideas for lyrics. The finished song is going to sound so much different. I don't even Vinnie, I genuinely don't even know if you picture melodies and stuff, or if it's just, how does that work on your end?
Sometimes I do, and it's loose, but I like to have what I do on a creative level push through to somebody else, right? And then I can edit from there and kind of go, I was imagining XYZ. And trust me, that happens a lot. And, for the Inevitables thing, with Obi and Alex, it was great to work remotely, but it was great to sit in the same room in Orlando for a couple days and really grind through the songs and go, hey, this is really not working, and it's not what I imagined, but maybe we try this. And that's where I think we all shined at that moment. And not only that, I think that everyone kind of worked well together. It's something that, I could step away from a computer or my phone and go, well, that was bullshit. But when you're face-to-face and working, it's different, because when the vibe changes, when everything else changes. So I think that the comfort level of what you're doing and being able to work, and collaborate with other people, I think, playing nice is super important, and you'll be able to take things away from that, right? Further strengthening your voice, further strengthening that foundation, right? So, that it's the comfort level in what you do that makes your voice amplified, louder to me, and stronger to me. If you were trying to force it, it's not loud, or it's too much, or it's too weird, or aggro or whatever. If you have that moment where it's that comfort, that strength, and that sometimes silence, that's a thing that amplifies the vibe, at least to me.
Yeah, quick story, and I know we're going to jump into some fun stuff, but when so with Westbound, we got like really nerdy about Jamaican music. Like we got like so insanely nerdy about all of it and just the nuances and whatever. But so one of the greatest things was we got to play shows with the Scatolites, and the Scatolites are like the Jamaican band, and that band was made up of like, pro musicians who were working at the hotels in Jamaica, in like the late 50s, early 60s. And so there's a particular drum groove that comes with playing like that kind of ska, and there's something called buru. And so we had a lesson with, so everybody, can you hear me? Everybody's smiling because does my breath smell bad? Is that what it is?
We're smiling at you. We're talking.
Okay, it's just Jono had a different kind of smile. So
See, I thought you were ripping on. I did posted that one drum video, and I was like, "Does this pass your reggae meter?" And you're like, "It's traditional." That's why I was smiling. Just
this
ripping
is what I mean.
you.
Our love is secure, man. I'm not ripping on your playing. Come on, buddy. But anyway. No, so there's a particular stylistic thing. There's something called the buru, right? And I'm not going to go into what a buru is. But anyway, as he was like talking to us about it, and he was like started like bringing, and he's like, well, it's kind of like a little bit of a rumba, and it's a little bit of like this jazz thing. And he's like, but at the end of the day, you just got to fix it for yourself. And it was like this piece of advice that I carried into like everything. He's like, so here's like the vibe, here's the style, here's the actual technical part of it as well. But at the end of the day, like you need to fix it for yourself. And I was like, oh man, like that's brilliant. I need to fix everything for myself. You know what I mean? Like anything that I learn, anything that I do, and in terms of like this concept of finding our own voices and being brave as creatives, if you don't ever take the step to do it the way that you do it, to authentically be yourself in it, then I think that's when we lose the battle. So
Damn.
Bam.
Let's wrap it there, man. I think
Let's do some fun stuff, and then I'll go get a breath mint because
All right, so I like getting to do this after this amazing, like, kind, profound thing you just said. So, to just touch on what he said, we're going to do a segment called Shitty Superheroes. What's up? I'm Jono, and I'm reading the room. So, Liana, do you have a paper and a writing device, utensil? That's the word I'm looking for. Okay. So we have 3 things, and we're going to give you a minute for each one. Also, I didn't tell anyone else what I came up with because it was during the show, and it's super serious, similar to, the groove that Obi learned. So the first one, let me get my timer because that's everyone's favorite part of this. All right. So, are you ready, Liana, for a challenge? All right. You have 1 minute to draw a superhero named Natman.
Natman?
Natman. G-N-A-T-M-A-N.
G-N-A-T?
Oh, yeah.
wait, not N-A-T?
G-N-A-T-M-A-N.
So it's not like a dude who's just like
5, 4.
I would.
Oh, I already started. You're too late.
All right. Here we go.
She ain't waiting for you, bro.
You were talking about Natty Ice, and I had to pause.
That's what I thought. I thought you meant like,
But I thought, I don't know, like natural light guy, like bro, burnout, like
Florida vibes, like Natty Ice.
I love the idea of being like natural light guy. You're like, oh, like the sun. You're like, no, like a light beer. I get you messed up, but I'm really refreshing.
That's quick.
Oh, dang.
That's done.
There you go.
I thought you were going to give me something really hard.
I mean, you
Clever.
could have gone a little bit more into detail.
I still have time, right?
Clever.
Yeah,
Clever.
you have 20 seconds.
All right.
Also, you say you like to listen to stuff. Like, what would you be listening to if you had to draw Natman?
Natman? I'd probably go for some... I'm really into... Mike got me into Crack Cloud. I feel like that would be some good tunes for Natman. Got it? All right.
Timer.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Super buff arms.
That's awesome.
All right.
If you were drawing Natman, what would you be listening to? Because I know as soon as you were like, what would you listen to? In my brain, I went Pantera, Cowboys from Hell. Like that.
Oh, Pantera, that'd be pretty good.
I was gonna say the Locust.
Yeah, Locust is great.
All right.
I would just say the Swellers.
Oh, okay. Dang it. All right. So the next one. Biclops.
Biclops?
5, 4, 3,
Wait, spell
2.
it.
Biclops.
Okay.
Not Cyclops.
Biclops. I feel like Jono took this really seriously.
Yeah, he did.
I would
have
be
one
like,
idea, but I can't draw it in 1 minute.
I would be like, Taco Man. Like,
So
I would have failed so hard at this game, Jono.
we were in Kerrang as superheroes, like it was like 8 years ago or something, and we all had to come up with a superhero, and mine was Biclops, and it was just a guy that wears glasses. And if you think about it, it's like, because Cyclops is just one eye guy, so then Biclops is 2 eye guy.
Oh, damn.
All right, you got 15 seconds.
No!
What are you listening to? What's the song? What's the soundtrack?
Biclops? Maybe some Ting Tings? I don't know.
Yeah, Ting Tings.
like that would
I like
be-
the Ting Tings.
The Streets, original pirate material.
All right.
That was dope, Vinny. That was dope. Oh, damn. That's cool.
Yeah.
I was like squinting, and I'm like, if I don't focus, it could be a thing.
It's definitely a 1 eyeball.
Definitely, yeah. There's one eye there,
But it's
but
two
like 2
people.
faces, 2
Yeah.
people, 2 heads.
Oh, that's
cool.
That's creative.
That's a cool
I was
concept.
definitely like, oh, I could draw 3 people making out in one body. But then I was like, I can't do that.
It's like, how many eyes? It doesn't matter.
Pops, I was like,
So many eyes.
no, there it is. Like, there it is.
It's just a normal guy. It's like, hey, I'm Steve, I'm bi. You're like, oh, that's the whole thing. All right, so last one. LaCroix boy. 5, 4, 3, 2, go.
LaCroix boy. Oh, man.
It could just be someone at country club.
Soundtrack for this is going to be epic.
Also, Kroger brand seltzer water.
Seltzer,
I'm
water.
not going full LaCroix. I'm not, full of myself.
Oh, man.
I've never had LaCroix before. Does that like say anything about me? Like when someone's like, hey, we could LaCroix. I'm like, I don't even know. Like
The best explanation of LaCroix I ever heard, it was from a tweet, and it said, LaCroix is like drinking plain seltzer water, and someone in the other room yells the name of a fruit. And that's what it tastes like.
awesome.
You're like, strawberry? I could see it. All right.
It's a whisper of flavor is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's the billboard.
A whisper,
Almost ready.
of flavor, water.
Right.
See, there it is.
There it is, man.
Hell yeah.
It's just a hipster, and he called himself a LaCroix boy. It's like soy boy, but worse.
Oh, God.
It's soy boy in your 30s.
So just me?
Actually, you are LaCroix boy.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's like, I know that tattoo. What the fuck?
That's right.
Well, thank you for indulging us.
Yes, people can buy them. They're listing minimum at $100.
There you go.
It's $1 a second. Seems fair. Great price. A bargain by any other. Yeah.
So yeah, that was awesome. So Liana, before we go, my favorite was LaCroix boy for sure. I'm going to see him everywhere next time I drive through Brooklyn. But my question is, so we've been talking about finding your own voice. We've talked about, you coming out of Florida. What's like the ultimate, man? Like, what's the ultimate win for you? Like, where do you land that you're just like, dude, this is it. I made it. I love everything that's going on. Because we've talked tonight about like not knowing, like, right, not being able to recognize those things and recognize the small victories. So what's the big one? What's the promised land for you? Where do you want to be?
A real answer is like someone saying, hey, this book that you did changed my life, or, you know, meant a lot to me, like saved me or something like that, because that's like kind of originally why I wanted to get into comics in general. My joke answer in that, because it is San Diego Comic-Con week and RIP, it's not happening, right? There's this joke that I was like, oh no, that I've been, you know, comic successful when I get to go on a yacht during San Diego, because some of the publishers or like actors throw insane like yacht parties during San Diego. I've never seen them. I don't know what they look like. I have no idea, but that's like my joke answer. But in reality, if like a kid came up to my booth and was like, I love your artwork or something, I mean, like, one person has already said something very nice to me at Memphis Comic Expo last year to where I started crying at my booth. It was really touching. Things like that. That, you know, I think I feel very successful as it is, so I guess that's more so my answer.
That's cool.
And
I'm going to figure out how to make the yacht thing a reality. We're going to do a yacht, guys.
We should do it. Inevitable yacht party.
See, my goal is no one compliments us, but we all get yachts, baby. That's the jam.
Trade compliments for ya.
Liana, do you have anything you want to plug?
Just my Twitter and Instagram and website, which is at Liana Kangas. And I also have a Patreon for those interested. You can see work in progress updates for my other work. You can be drawn into a comic. You can have many things, including snail mail sent to you every month on my Patreon, which is also Liana Kangas.
Sick. Thanks so much for being here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Love you, Liana. You get to see your artwork soon.
Yay. I'm really
Inevitables.
excited.
Woo!
Yes, so speaking of that, what is next for the Inevitables, y'all? So we have Liana is hard at work drafting pages and whatnot. So what's the next step? What's coming up, guys?
Well,
go ahead.
I would say that we have the first song that anyone will be able to hear from the Inevitables available at Kickstarter launch, and you can check it out, right? Not only that, we'll have a few different tiers to be able to come in on, and there's a lot of cool surprises for that. But I'll be honest with you, man, there's a lot to go on the Inevitables world, and we're working at it, but it's going to be a fun rollout. Vinyl record, comic book, there's a toy, but we will not talk about that. But there's a toy that's going to be out, and there's other releases, and Obi sort of hinted at it and kind of said it's bigger than this. There's a lot of things that are going to offshoot this first issue of the Inevitables, and it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be a busy rest of 2020. And we'll be dodging comets and pandemics and whatever hurricanes, and that's what it is. But we also will have a bunch of Inevitables world stuff that's coming. So, Jim,
and
the answer?
Well,
those are oysters, sir. Thank you very much.
I recall we were hitting all the high notes, singing loud out of the windows, sounding like sirens, going out like lions, a match to gas, and then a blast.